everybody, and welcome back to another great edition of my Grue Rume Show. And for the Grue Rume Show today, we got a very great guest, and he's an actor, and he stars in season 4 of Stranger Things, and he plays number 2 on the show. And number 2, of course, if you watch the show, he has a special connection to Matthew Modine and Millie Bobby Brown that plays Pa and L, and we're going to talk to him about the show. My name is Rocco Cross. I am the host at Stutters. I am the host of the Grue Rume, and my interview with Tristan Spohn. I think I will have you say your last name when you come on the show, but Tristan is my guest from Stranger Things. This is my Grue Rume, and welcome to my nightmare. Okay, welcome to Grue, and thank you so much for coming on the show and taking time out of your night.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Definitely, buddy. Definitely, it's gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to doing this.
Me as well. Yeah, I always I feel like so much of my life experience has been learning that the more I embrace that authenticity, the more I can actually have a genuine connection with people. And the cool thing about it too is that the more that I authentically show up, and specifically doing like stuff like this where I'm not a character, I'm not an actor, I am just me, Tristan, as I am. I feel like it allows me to more easily, when that camera's rolling, to still honor at least parts of my essence instead of molding and adapting it to be some people-pleasing personality or something like that. So
nice.
In short, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here and be authentic. So
definitely, bud. Yeah. But the first thing I want to ask you, because I don't know if I butchered your name when I first did my little thing before this. Like, how do you say your last name?
It is Spohn. So like phone, but with an S. Literally everybody butchers it. So you're in good company. It's all good. I typically go by Spoon, and then I started for a brief period of time working at the same job as my dad. And so he was the big spoon. I was the teaspoon. So it's either or depending on where I am.
Nice. Oh wait, looks like if I put my arm up, the green screen goes away. Okay, that's good.
The more you know.
Yeah, right. So, like the first thing I wanted to start out by asking you is, what was the very first role you ever had that had speaking lines?
So in terms of like film?
Yeah.
So of course there's like the short film and like the web series, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of like my first like big professional work, it actually was Stranger Things.
Oh,
and then
really?
Because of how long it took for the show to come out, then about like 6 months later, I filmed this show called FBI, which got released like a couple of months after we filmed it. So even though I filmed it like 6 or 7 months after Stranger Things, it's the first thing that ever kind of got into the public sphere. But in terms of actual like first ever professional like speaking line, Stranger Things was that for me. So quite a phenomenal first thing to ever book. So I feel very grateful. Yeah.
Wow, nice. So, like, how did you actually get to be part of this huge television show, Stranger Things? How did everything come about for you, and all that fun stuff?
Yeah. So I've been auditioning for a while. And so even though Stranger Things was like the first thing I booked, I'd been reading for stuff for 2.5, maybe even 3 years before I actually ended up booking it. And I didn't have a lot of perceived traction. Like I didn't really get any callbacks. I didn't technically get any callbacks, but I had like 1 or 2 projects that were like, hey, we like you, we're going to pin you. But I never had like an actual callback. It was just 2 out of like the 150 or so auditions that ended up having any traction that ended up following through. I only specifically referenced that because Carmen Cuba, who's the casting director for Stranger Things, I actually read for like, I think it was either 4, 5, or 6 different roles with her before she actually sent me out for 2. And I actually read for Eddie Munson as well for season 4. So 2 wasn't the first Stranger Things character I read for. And it was one of those things where I think so often whenever as an actor you're not getting perceived traction, it's easy to think that you're stuck and that you're not moving anywhere. And it wasn't until 2 where Carmen actually specifically reached out to my agent and requested me to read for it. Like, it wasn't like something I was submitted for. Because of the other tapes I had done, they thought of me when they were casting the role and they sent that tape to me. And so it was such a cool experience even before I booked it, because I realized, oh, all of those auditions I thought were doing nothing for me were actually laying the groundwork for building the type of rapport that would eventually lead to me getting requested for something. And I think it's easy to undervalue just how important all those small steps are when we don't see the immediate results of them in the moment.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I have to ask, like, how did you feel when they actually said to you, okay, you're going to be part Stranger Things, you're going to be...
I screamed. I mean, how do you not scream? It was cool because my agent called me and I think I was on the phone with my agent just like freaking the hell out for like easily like 5-10 minutes, and then they were like, okay, well, cool, let me go get the contracts all squared away and I'll get back to you. So of course I call my mom, I call my dad, I make a couple of rounds of calls, and it's my sister's favorite show of all time. And so more than even my excitement, like being part of the show, I was especially excited to be a part of something so important and so valuable to my sister, because every big brother will pretend like they don't care what their little siblings think about them. We want their approval so bad. We don't ever want to say that we do. It's like a secret approval.
Okay. And how would you describe 2?
He's a tortured soul. I feel that for me, I think I'm able to see him in a much more empathetic light than a lot of other... Oh, there's a big fly. I think that he's one of those characters that, of course, he doesn't make good decisions. He is very selfish. He's very jealous and all of a little girl. It's not logical, but it's one of those things where just because someone makes a bad decision or even a series of bad decisions doesn't mean they're automatically a bad person. Everybody has this kind of gray area. And so for me, 2 is one of those tortured characters where, yes, just because he's had a bad upbringing doesn't necessarily mean he's right to lash out in the way that he does, but I could understand at least where it came from, and I didn't judge him for it. I was like, okay, I know I'm just acting out of my own like neediness and my own lack of self-love. So this is all just me projecting out whatever I feel like I'm lacking internally. But I have a lot more empathy, I think, than people that just watch the show and are just like, he hurts 11, screw him. I hope he dies. I hope he gets his throat slit and he deserves to just have the most excruciating torture done upon him. So, yeah.
It's funny. There are probably a lot of people that really get into the show that don't know how to separate a character from the person. Like, when I watch a show, I was like, oh, that jerk, he's going after Elle. But then, you realize it's just a character and it's not the person behind them too.
Which is the biggest honor, by the way. Like, I know that I did a really good job, because even my like friends and family told me, we didn't even see you. Like, it was like you were completely gone. You were a shell that this character took over. And I think when it's somebody that knows you super well, that is able to say they couldn't even recognize you, I think that means you did a really good job. And I'll tell you this, my relationship to the response to two has been very touch and go, in the
Sure.
sense of, on one hand, a lot of people have been very supportive, and they've talked about how they could see all the layers to him, and they
Mhm.
loved how vulnerable he got in that electrocution scene, all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But you then also have the people that, like you said, aren't able to distinguish reality from fiction. And so I, for a little bit, did struggle with getting a lot of very not nice, I'll say not nice comments and responses, and some of them were pretty violent. I had a couple people that were like, "You're a waste of space, give up," but all these like really rude and mean like things. And I'm now at a healthy relationship to it where I'm like, okay, that's not personal. That means I did a good job, because they aren't able to tell reality versus fiction. But me as the actor in those moments, I'm like, wait, no, I'm not a bad guy. I just
I know, exactly.
so it's been, I wouldn't mind playing a good guy next time, so people could see that I have those softer sides to me as well. But if I'm working, I'm fine with whatever. So
Well, I'm sure like once you start coming on like stuff like this, more interviews, that the people that can't separate the character from the person will actually see what a really nice guy you are.
I hope so. But
I know, right? Exactly. And what did you like best about playing too?
honestly, as an actor, I loved how intense everything was. Like,
Well,
especially with it being the first thing that I ever did, none of my scenes were conversational. Like, none of them were like super low. Everything was super pedal to the metal. I'm going all out. And I loved that, because it really gave me such a beautiful opportunity to really show my range as an actor. It was also very tough, because having to go there in such a dark way would get kind of tough to shake off at the end. And especially when I was on location in Atlanta in a hotel room, I'd wrap and then I'd go home to look at myself in the mirror, and it would get a little isolating in some moments. Just taking that darkness into solitude is never the most fun, but I've always been grateful for those dark nights of the souls as well, because for whatever reason, I tend to learn the most whenever I'm going through those tough times. And I think it's in that darkness that you really start to peel away all the BS and the superficial stuff that you put on, and get to the core of like what you actually are, which is super cool. So maybe that's also a benefit, is that it forced me to go to dark places. So I'm very familiar with that side of me. And the more familiar you get with it, the more difficult it is for that side to control you. So whenever it pops up, you're like, oh, I know how to handle you. You're just like an old time friend now. So.
And what scene did you like the best that two was part of?
The electrocution scene, for really two reasons. One, it was like the pinnacle moment for me to show everything that two had been dealing with. Like, until that scene, he's a douche, he's being a jerk, and he doesn't really, as the actor, I have flashes, but they're not like large enough where without that scene you couldn't go back and be like, oh, I can see, because of the way his eye glinted in this exact moment, that it is really meaning this hidden subtext. So I loved being able to show that more vulnerable side, because it's a side that I think was necessary to really explain his motives and explain where he was coming from. I also loved it because I had absolutely no idea that it was happening. That was the one scene that they forgot to send me.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's the one, and it was funny because I'm gonna give a shout out to my AD, AJ Bruno. We were talking as I was like being wrapped, and I told him, I was like, so listen, everybody's been telling me about this electrocution scene that's coming up. I assume it's only like 3/8 of a page, but if you find it, could you send it to me? Because I don't really know what everyone's talking about. And I see it on the advanced call sheet. And he's like, yeah, I'm sure you're right. It's probably just 3/8 if they didn't send it to you, but I'll look at it and I'll let you know. I go home. He then calls me while I'm in my hotel room and he's like, dude, this is a 2.5-page scene. You're telling me you didn't get sent this before? And I'm like, I certainly have not. I didn't even know there was any sort of electrocution, much less 2.5 pages of like dialogue. But the reason I love that is because I had to go purely off of instinct. Like I didn't have the time to prep a whole bunch of like interesting choices or like what this line might mean or all of those like scene breakdown kind of stuff, which because of the way I now do my process, I've thrown a lot of that away because I feel like it gets me in my head. But in that scene, I was so free. It was like the most like free I've ever felt acting because I literally had no idea what was going to happen. I had no preconceived notions. I was like, all right, I'm off book and now we're just going to see what happens. So yeah.
Wow.
Cool.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
and I saw online like you really shaved your head for this role. I mean, you got very nice hair and you
Thank
shaved
you.
your whole. Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah,
Like, you
I
shaved
have
your whole hair, your whole head off.
I did. I have anime hair, is what everybody tells me. It was a really cool experience for me because the thing I've always been most complimented on is my hair. And it would either be, your hair is just so like movie star-esque, or it's so wavy. What do you do to it? And then of course I tell them I literally do nothing. I don't even put water. I just shampoo and condition it. And then of course they hate me because they're like, oh, it's that. But it was a wonderful experience for me because it's not until you do something drastic to your physical appearance, like shaving your head, that you realize how tied to your identity all of that is. And so for me, it became this like redefining moment where I'm looking at a completely new version of myself in the mirror. I've booked the first big professional thing. In so many ways, it feels like this is the next phase. And it was super cool for me to be entering this next phase of my career looking like a different person, because it almost made it feel like I could be a different person. And it also made it easier to like get into the mindset of two, because I looked in the mirror and I did not, obviously I recognized myself, but it was so different seeing me without hair that it was so much easier to like take myself. This is going to sound weird, but it was not an out of body experience. That's too intense for what it was. It wasn't anything like that, but it was definitely one of those like, okay, I didn't realize how much of my self-worth I attached to having good hair. That's not something I can ever control. So it's actually very problematic that I've attached so much self-worth to something I can't control. How can I reframe my identity around something that actually matters and is sustainable? And so that caused its whole own identity crisis and its whole other dark night of the soul. But all in all, it was the first step to reshaping my identity around aspects of myself that were actually worth shaping my identity around. Which is probably not the answer people expect to, hey, did you shave your head? But I'm thorough. So
yeah, like you definitely got into the role.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Okay.
Yeah,
We're good.
You definitely got into the role if you were willing to shave your head. Like, because like all the actors that play like, you know, 2 and 3 and 4, and like all the actors are bald. Like they all shaved their heads too, like you did.
Yeah, Millie is the only one that had like a shaved head wig. Um, and even like the photo doubles and the stunt doubles shaved
Yeah,
their head.
really.
It was everybody had to do it that were like part of like the numbers. My photo double bleached and shaved his head. Millie's photo double shaved their head as well. So yeah, everybody had their own identity crisis as a result of those scenes. But everyone was also super excited about it. It's one of those things where like it's one thing if it's like a random show that you're not passionate about, but when it's Stranger Things, you're like, shoot, I'll cut off my pinky. I don't care. Let's do it. I'm down. So
And the one of the scenes, like the scene you were talking about, like it's a very intense scene where you're acting with one of the all-time greats, Modine. And how was that scene like between you and him? The intense scene, the electrocution, like.
yeah, man, let me tell you, I think that the biggest I love when people ask me about this because I cannot give Matthew Modine more praise. Like the here's the thing, so many people will be able to acknowledge those like actors that are able to be super emotional, super vulnerable, doing stuff like what I did in the electrocution scene where you're like all out. What people underestimate are those actors that every single actor they're in a scene with shines, and you can't fully place your finger on why their scene partners shine all the time until you start to realize they're masters of getting things out of their scene partner. Matthew was incredible at finding different ways to manipulate the way that he would say his lines, the way that he would look at me, the way that he would even adapt his body language just to amp me into the intensity and the stakes of the scene. And it was one of those really cool things where he was so committed and went so above and beyond to make sure that I had everything I needed to give the best possible performance. He went all out when the camera wasn't even on him. And that's the cool thing too, is like he got so like intense and aggressive with me back. Then you
Yeah.
go and watch the show and he's like, he's Papa, he's super grounded, super chill. But Matthew went there with me when the camera was on me because he knew that would be the easiest way to get something like that out of me. And that's what I mean is he's a master of not just being a good actor when the camera's on him, but just being a good scene partner. And it inspired me. And I felt terrible because I must have, not that I was a bad scene partner, but because I went all out, it got to where we were on his close-up and my 2-shot. And because I had been screaming so much, my voice was gone. It sounded like Batman. And I felt so bad because he was such a good partner for me. And then we get to his coverage and it's like, no, Papa, please don't electrocute me. Not literally that, but anyway, I am so thankful for him because that performance wouldn't have been possible without him pushing me the way that he did. So
I mean, to be in a scene with someone like him is absolutely great. I mean, the guy's been in so many films. He's been around a long time. Like, if there's anyone to learn from, it's definitely him.
for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And why do you think two didn't get along with L?
It's purely because the attention was being taken from him. It's one of those things where, you know, you can, and plenty of people can and I also disagree with like some of the decisions that he made. I had to do a thing where I got out of my actor brain, so I didn't judge what he was doing. But then as soon as I finished filming, I allowed myself to think back and be like, okay, you did not make the best decision when you did this, but it is what it is. Anyway, to get back to your question, the only thing he ever actually cared about was Papa loving him.
Mhm.
Everything he did was because he was trying to either A, get Papa to love him, or he was negatively reacting to feeling like Papa didn't love him. And so with the whole 11 situation, 2 genuinely thinks that I just got my butt kicked by this little girl. How is Papa gonna love and respect me anymore? And so it's that thing where I know some people asked me a question, because I've had some people ask me like, did 11 annoy you and stuff like that? It's like, no, I was feeling so invalidated by Papa. I just lashed out, and it wasn't that 11 annoyed me. I was jealous of her, and I so badly wanted to break her so that next time I wouldn't have my butt handed to me. Next time I could be the victor, be the winner, and be the one that got all of Papa's love and respect. And yeah.
Oh, okay. And 2 and L, they have like the big fight scene where you said where 2 got beat by L. Like how was it like sharing scenes with Millie and actually doing fight scenes with her?
So super fun, just because I think anybody that has a love of the film industry is gonna geek out over like the special effects they were doing. Like anytime there's like these cool pulleys and wires and stunt doubles involved, I'm like, I don't even care if I'm in the scene. I just want to be on set and watch. So to be able to see how that process was done, super cool and such a blessing. I think that it's one of those weird things where like no matter how much we like disassociate, because not everybody does this, but the way I got into 2 is I had to just completely disassociate from myself, because for me, basically ripping out all of my essence and becoming a shell of myself is exactly what was needed to have that kind of like darkness that 2 needed. And so it was like this weird situation where I was kind of disassociated, but the back of my mind was like, I'm filming on a huge set with one of my sister's idols. How did this even happen? And the crazy thing is that Millie is so sweet and so nice, and me and all of like my little girl beatdown gang, we felt so bad that we had to be so mean to her when she was so sweet and so like welcoming to us. And it was a lot of fun, but it was also like a slight cringe that I had to be so so yeah.
Okay. And what did you learn from being on set and working with both Matt and Millie?
So much. We could make a movie right here, just me talking about everything that I learned. Professionally speaking, I of course learned from Matthew just how important it is to be a good scene partner, and in me completely blowing my voice out as well, I learned how important it is to have stamina so that in the future I'm able to do that scene in a way where my voice is still there to give everything that Matthew needs and to return that. A lot of what I learned from Millie was how to basically get my body into the intensity of the scene. She had so many like little tricks that she has because of how intense so much of her scenes are as well, to really get that adrenaline pumping. So things like screaming right before the take, doing these like very like shallow breaths and stuff like that to really kind of amp into it. And it was those little like tricks on how to manipulate my body that I started to learn, how to basically stop acting intense and just be intense. And that was one cool side effect of the circle game, is that while we were filming the circle game, I actually just not taught myself, but I learned an acting technique that I literally use in everything I do now if I have to go there, which is when we're doing the circle game, we have these powers to try to actually have it believable that I'm exerting all of this force while standing on this one mark. Oh, sorry.
It's all right.
While standing on this one mark, I would have to be flexing every single muscle in my body. I'd be hyperventilating a little bit, and I would do all of that while just standing stock still. And that's something I do for everything now, because it's such an easy way to tire my body out. It's such an easy way to do that while standing on one mark, so I'm not messing with anybody's lighting or anything like that. And on top of that, it's like something that without fail will always disassociate me even more, so that it feels less like, oh, I'm an actor about to do this scene, and it's just this weird cloud that passes over me. And I don't know, when I get in that state, everything just feels like I'm watching a movie myself. Like, it doesn't even feel like I'm controlling anything. It's like things are just happening. And I'll tell you this as well. There's something that my mentor, really my two mentors, talk about pretty frequently, Glenn Morshower and E.A. Castillo. They talk about how a lot of actors will have something called actor goo, which is when you're watching them work and it's very clear that there are some ways they're moving their body and saying their words that are very performative and very, oh, there is a camera and I am trying to be as emotional as possible. And it detracts from it feeling real life and feeling believable. And the cool thing about tiring myself out like that as well is that when I'm exhausted, I'm just doing the scene. Like, I don't care about like, oh, I need to hit this line and emphasize this word. I need to take a dramatic pause at this moment. I'm just like, yeah, okay, I'm here. We're doing this scene. That really offends me. I'm going to really go into that. But I'm not putting all of that actor superficial, like over prepared kind of stuff into it. I have a tendency to just rant. So
no, it's good. It's good. It's fine. I like it. And you mentioned that while you were filming this, shaving your head, and I even saw your video too. You went through an identity crisis, and how did you wind up pulling yourself out of that?
It's actually it is interesting that you ask me that, because if I'm like completely honest, the last like week or so I've been in very much so a bit of a haze. It's one of those things where I perform really, really good under stress and under pressure, which is why I allow myself to bite my own butt, not literally, but in the sense of, because I know I'm so good at it, I have a tendency to intentionally overwhelm myself to the point where I just can't manage. It seems like it's veering off from your question, but it does connect in the sense of, when I get in that place, I basically dig myself into this hole where there's all of this work and all of this, for lack of a more intelligent or cohesive sounding word, all of this stuff that feels like it's just resting right on top of me. Yeah. All of it, it's like I've dug my own grave. So it's like my own doing, but I can't move, and I can't even reach out to anybody. It feels like I'm just trapped in this hole that is me, myself, and I just feel very isolated and alone. I say that because it's one of those, what I've realized is the key to pull myself out of any of those identity crises is to figure some way to bring that community back, because most of the time the reason I get into that phase is I try to do everything myself and I forget about the people that matter. And ultimately, anytime you talk to anybody that has had a near-death experience, or I've had the privilege of talking to a lot of people that have gotten older, and the thing they always say is they regret not spending as much time with the people that they love.
Okay.
And that's the thing, is that what happens is I realize I get so easily trapped in my own world, and the identity crisis comes from me getting trapped in defining myself by so many things that don't actually matter. So for example, with Stranger Things, I booked it and I wasn't allowed to talk about it. The identity crisis that came from that is, yes, I filmed this big show and then I had to come back. And how do I handle that downtime? How do I keep consistently moving and appreciating all of those small things? And it got to this point where I was feeling so resentful towards having to keep everything a secret, because I was so desperate for that to validate me. And because I had now attached all of this worth, all of my identity as, oh, I finally booked a big show. The problem with that is, and the reason I'm now kind of pulling myself back out of that phase now, is that that's temporary. Like, that's never going to be sustainable, because you can never latch onto anything like that for the entire rest of your life. Like, I would hope I'm not going to latch onto Stranger Things being my main identity for the rest of my life. And right now it's one of those things where there's been so much support and there's been so much attention I've recently had, which is beautiful, and it's such a blessing. And I can say that it's a blessing. I can say that I'm thankful for it, at the same time as saying it's a little bit overwhelming. And I've felt very paralyzed recently, because it's like I have this following, I have all of these ideas. Where do I go from here? And how do I get myself back into acting for the love of things instead of acting off of what I think I should be doing? Because anytime I put the word should into the way I should spend my day, I'm not honoring myself. I'm honoring how I think other people will perceive something that I'm doing. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm working to, I still have a couple of like cool Stranger Things like related items, and I'm super excited about it. But I'm now working on reminding myself, this is wonderful. Don't tie so much of your identity into being a professional working actor that anytime you're not like acting, you feel like a failure and you feel like you're trapped and you're not going anywhere. And so I'm not 100% there. I even, right before we got on this call, was trying to journal out, talking about how I just feel like I'm so caught in my own way, and I feel like I am just letting myself veer off track, because it's funny, I get so afraid of not doing enough that I don't do enough, because I'm trapped in the overwhelm of all of these things that I think I should be doing, that I don't even have the energy or the willpower to do a single one of those things. Which is where pulling myself out of that identity crisis comes from, is being like, okay, how can I just make a choice? How can I reshape and remind myself of the parts of my identity that matter, so that it's not even a choice. It's like, oh, well, because this is what I care about, because this is important to me, obviously this is what I'm going to spend my time on, such as doing things like this podcast, where it's just embracing the authenticity of whatever is going on, because I know that that's the best way to have some type of effect on other people. So that's my rant.
Yeah. And what do you like doing during your free time when you're not auditioning or acting?
I love reading, and I love board games.
Oh,
So
nice.
me, it's like, it's nostalgic tradition for me, my mom, and my sister to play. So growing up, that was like, and this is why I've had a couple of friends that are fathers, and we've had similar conversations to this, but this is what I'm always going to use for whenever I eventually become a father, as a reminder that it's not the trips that we go on. It's not all the things that I've had bought for me by my parents that I remember growing up. It's the little things like board games at dinner with my mom and my sister that I remember and that I think of most fondly. And so because of that, I'm definitely a board game connoisseur. I have this giant little board game closet that has all sorts of different stuff, and I'm always trying to rope people into playing them with me. I love this game called Mafia, which is where one person is the hidden mafia trying to so yeah, I really, community and learning are the only two things I really care about outside of acting. So if I'm not acting, I'm either trying to learn something through reading, taking classes, or I'm spending time with friends and family. Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. Board games are so much fun. Like I love either doing just board games or video games. I got like a PlayStation 4, so
Yeah.
what about you? Are you into video games too, as well as board games?
I honestly, I go back and forth. My problem is I get obsessive. So for me, it's one of those things where, and this is where all of the introspection and all of the journaling and all of that, like really good mental health stuff comes in handy for me, which is I don't know how to moderate. I wish I did, but and some of this is probably self-fulfilling prophecy. I know maybe it's just because I tell myself I can't moderate, that whenever I get in those situations, I don't moderate. But all that to say, I actually had to delete Madden. It's so funny. I deleted Madden this afternoon because I got too obsessive with it, and it was starting to like negatively impact other areas. So I do like video games, but for me, I know that I go, and this is not with everybody, this is just what I noticed with me. For people that have the right balance, I look up to y'all, and I wish I could do that, but I get too obsessive.
Okay. And I always ask guests this when I have them on. What horror movies do you like watching if you're a fan of horror films?
Yeah, so I would say Happy Death Day
Oh, I love
is
that
actually
movie.
one of my favorites. Simply because it was one of the first horror movies I saw, because growing up, I was not a horror movie guy. Like I extremely resisted it because I was such a huge scaredy cat that I was like, I don't want to go down that road. Then, of course, I started. First, we were best friends, but my girlfriend now, she's a huge horror movie fanatic. So really, what ended up happening is that it started with just, we would have horror movie date nights, and then it would turn into just horror movie marathons. And next thing I know, we have like gothic decor. We have all of these like horror movie memorabilia and stuff like that, which is cool. I do like it now, but it is funny because now I'm like, I can name you even some niche horror movies. Like I'll tell you, South Korea, in my opinion, has the best like horror. Like I have never,
Totally agree.
I don't know if, have you seen, I might butcher this. It's like Ganjiam,
Yeah. I definitely know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
so creepy.
I know.
It's the one that has that guy from Squid Game.
Yeah.
There's this, because I don't want to spoil it for people. There's this one specific scene where there's this darkness in the eyes, freaks the crap out of me. And that's like the most scared I've ever been watching any horror movie. So yeah, I also liked Haunting of Hill House.
Oh, yeah.
I don't really like slasher movies, just because they get a little too violent for my taste. But yeah, what about you? What kind of movies do you watch?
Oh my God, like there's so many horror films that I like. of course, I like all the Elm Streets and Friday the 13th and Chucky and all that. But
Yeah.
one horror film that I absolutely love is like this real cheesy 80s horror film called Night of the Demons.
Night of the Demons. Okay.
And it's like a I think it was made in like either 88, 89ish. And it's a cheesy horror film, but it's like
Mhm.
one of my all-time favorites.
Well, those are the best. I feel like the cult classics, I mean, it's one of those things where I don't know. I love the nostalgia of that kind of stuff where it's like it's just about having like that special connection and having those special memories that you evoke while watching something like that. So I'll have to check that out. I haven't heard of that one, so I'm gonna put that on my list.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to watch it if you don't mind like cheesy horror. Like it's definitely one to watch.
I finally watched the original Scream, and I actually really, really liked it. I thought Matthew Lillard did a phenomenal job of it.
He was so funny in that.
Uh-huh.
You cut me a little deep.
Exactly.
So you say you and your girl love like horror and stuff. So do you two go all out for Halloween?
Oh, you have no idea. Halloween is her favorite day in the entire world. We're gonna start decorating for Halloween probably next month.
Oh,
like,
really?
we take it seriously. Last year we really wanted to do Squid Game, but we didn't order the right costumes, and so they ended up getting like super delayed, and then they didn't end up coming out the way that we wanted them to. So I don't remember what we did instead, but oh yeah. I think this year we're planning on doing like one of those typical like horror movie marathons or something like that. Where you put skulls all over the place as well. So, I'm sure you can tell by my reaction. What about you?
Oh my God, I'm a huge horror. My favorite holiday is Halloween. Like I'm so into all that. Even my job, I work as a clerk in like a office area, and I have the room I sit in, and I got like a Jason poster. I got a life-size skeleton hanging on the door, and so yeah, I'm real big with like horror and Halloween, and that's my thing.
Sure, you loved season 4 because there's so many like 80s horror like what's the word? Oh gosh, Easter eggs.
The Easter eggs, yeah.
And it's so heavily inspired. So it's because I mean Vecna feels so like, is it? I admit I'm not good with like Friday the 13th. Is it Friday the 13th that has Freddy Krueger?
Oh no, Nightmare on Elm Street. Well, they have the actor that plays Freddy Krueger in one episode, Robert Englund.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw him on the episode, I was freaking out. I was like, "Oh my God, it's Freddy Krueger!"
And they really did a number on his face too, with all of that like scarring and all of that.
I mean, poor Robert Englund can't catch a break. He's either his face is either burned and scarred as Freddy, or he's blind in Stranger Things.
Yeah. People just like to give his character some abuse, I guess. I don't know. I'm sure that's a really cool. I'm sure he must like love podcasts with all the time he spends in the chairs getting makeup done.
I know, right? Exactly. that has to, I remember listening to him one time on an interview, and he said it takes about 7 to 8 hours to get the whole Freddy face on, and then like another few hours to get it off. And like that's crazy to sit in a chair for all that time, like becoming Freddy Krueger. Like that's
Mhm.
insane.
I would love to do something like that just because I want to know how trippy it would be to look in the mirror and just see that you're a monster. Like I would
know,
love
right?
to know like Jamie Campbell Bower's experience when he looked at himself in the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah, like that. He's really doing a great job with that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he goes like from this quiet, good, good looking guy, and you're like, oh, he's so nice. And then when Elle takes that thing out of his neck, it's like game over.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
what a what a twist with him.
It was crazy because I knew that was coming, and yet I still got so many goosebumps and tingles. So that's how I knew that they executed it so beautifully. Because I was like, I literally expected this, and I'm freaking out. Like, how did they do that? Um, but
I know, and like all the ones in the room, like even your character, they all suffer a death at the hands of him.
mm-hmm. That was probably the most pain I've ever been in my entire life. And I'm not even exaggerating. The
Really?
way that scene, I made a very strong choice, but a very painful voice that honestly I will never do again, just because I could see myself rupturing something the way that I did it. So what I was doing essentially is, because he's like constricting and choking me,
Mhm.
I had the really strong choice of like, what if I'm screaming, but while intentionally constricting my vocal cords? So I was literally like basically flexing my neck and like intentionally swelling it up while like kind of like screaming at the exact same time.
Oh my
I've
God.
never felt, and all of that too was while I was doing the whole flex my body, like every single, I almost passed out, I think like a couple of times when I did that scene. And I exerted myself so much. I actually burst a ton of blood vessels in my eyes. I took pictures of it too. Like it was, yeah, it was, I don't know why I put myself there. It's crazy because me and my friends recently like went and specifically they watched that scene, and I kind of pointed out all the stuff that were like enhanced and practical, and then I pointed out what was actually like my veins because of the way that I was doing it. And my face even started to go kind of like bluish and purplish.
Damn. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I have to hand it to you for definitely getting it into your role. Method
I went there.
acting, they call it, right?
Uh-huh.
Wow, that's crazy. And what about like the music? Like what kind of songs do you like? What's on your playlist?
Yeah, I honestly have a very eclectic taste, to be honest. I listen to a lot of movie soundtracks just because I like
Nice.
going through the day feeling like I'm in a movie. Um, whenever the new Batman movie came out, I was listening to the Batman soundtrack on repeat. Specifically when I was at the gym, because it would give me the extra motivation to be like, I'm about to go fight crime. Uh, but no, so one, one song that I'm like obsessed with right now was called "I'd Run to You" by CJ Starnes. Um, Another one is this song. So my favorite artist, almost of all time, if not of all time, would be Jeremy Zucker. I love
Oh,
listening to Jeremy Zucker. I recently saw Chelsea Cutler in concert as well, and she does a couple of collaborations with him, so I loved that. Quinn, I think Quinn 92, but it's spelled XC and then it's like in Roman numerals. I really enjoy him. Yeah, all sorts of stuff.
Oh wow, okay. And when you watched season 4 of Stranger Things, were you like me and probably like so many others that can't get running up the hill out of your head?
So it's a little bit. It was crazy because I think that the scene was so phenomenally done. I didn't get the song stuck in my head until then. Everybody got the song stuck in their head, and now I do, because I hear it all the time. It is stuck in my head now, and me and my, maybe she would be mad at me for sharing this, but me and my girlfriend like to, like, on the spot, like, make parodies of songs that are like sweet, and so I've done that with Running Up That Hill a couple of times.
Okay, nice. So. And I also see you do a podcast too, right?
Yes, I only hesitated because I need to be better. It's called People Spooning Podcast. I legit have 30 episodes recorded, but I only have 3 that are published because it's like I talked about earlier. I'm very good about putting way too much on my plate that I really can't handle, because I tell myself that I'm so good at handling too much stuff that it makes it very hard to actually accomplish anything. Especially with like the venue that I run, because it's very, it's awesome because you can create your own schedule here, and the phone calls and emails are so that's actually a fun little fact. So I was working here while I was filming Stranger Things, and so because of that, when I was on set, when I was in my trailer in between takes, I'd be answering calls, I'd be responding to emails, I'd be setting up a bunch of tours for one of my tour managers to walk people through the space. Like, it was actually crazy how many events I was getting booked without even being here. And the only issue I sometimes have with that is that it does become hard to have like a cohesive structure. And I do sometimes have an issue with, because everything is so reactive, I'm never able to really relax. There's always something that I feel like in the back of my mind I have going on, or that I need to kind of take care of. So whenever I finally just force myself to sit down for just like an entire day, clear my schedule, and just focus on the podcast, I'll be able to get back into it and get back in the swing of it. But yeah.
Okay. And is there anything coming up next for you, like, and any other films or TV shows that in the works?
Yes and no. I'm technically attached as a series regular to one show, but it's still in the development phase.
Oh, nice.
And so while I'm attached to it, it's such an unpredictable industry. So they're thinking that it's a really good shot and that it's most likely going to get picked up, but you never know. So I'm talking about the identity crisis, I'm trying not to attach too much to that one thing, so that whether it goes or it doesn't go, my self-worth isn't wrapped up in this thing that I have no control over. But aside from that, I have like a couple of personal projects I'm working on, but I have had a lot of opportunities recently come my way since the show came out. I've been getting a lot more like auditions. I've had a couple of like, I think I had like one actually direct offer, but I wasn't able to do it just because of the schedule that I had at that time. Okay. So that's the crazy thing, is that literally I can be saying, no, I don't have anything right now, and then tomorrow I get a phone call and it changes everything. Legit with Stranger Things, I got the audition, I had to turn it in like 2 days, and then 2 days later, I got the phone call that I booked it and had to fly out in 2 more days. So it all changes in like the snap of a finger.
Oh yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah. So whenever something new kind of comes up, I'll update you, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely do that, and you never know. You might be in a horror film too.
Exactly. Yeah. So the direct offer was actually for a horror film.
Oh, nice, nice. Okay. And where can fans find you at, like, with your pages?
Yeah. So because Instagram has the biggest following for me right now, I mostly post there. It's just my name at Tristan Spohn. I also have a YouTube technically where I like to make the joke that I post every full moon because it's the most inconsistent upload schedule and just whenever I feel like it. But it's also just my name. So if you go search my name in YouTube, you'll be able to pull up some of those videos. I have a couple, like, I did a lot of, like, back when I was going through my big, like, personal, like, growth kind of phase where I had my identity crisis that in turn taught me a lot about myself and gave me a lot of insight. I started making a lot of videos kind of geared towards sharing that with the hope that maybe someone could resonate with it and it could help them in some type of way. I've had a couple of little goofy things as well that people can look at. So yeah, those 2 primary places are where I post the most.
Sweet. Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time out, coming on the show. Like, it was really fun talking to you.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you, Rocco. I appreciate you reaching out, and
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
always happy to just have a conversation and yeah, just kind of see where it goes. So
Yeah, of course. Like, definitely stay in touch. Like, if you got
yeah,
anything else coming out and you want to come back on, I'm definitely down.
I'll let you know for sure.
Yeah. Okay, buddy. Thanks again, man.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.